Good morning, everybody. Matthew Wright, founder and CEO of Specright. I know we're going to compete with other speakers up there, so hopefully if you can't hear me, just give me a thumbs up and I'll try to speak louder. My voice is typically lower. So I'm really excited that you all got to join and sit and listen to something that I find very fascinating, which is specification data management and using technology to change the way we do business for the better, creating great efficiencies and changing the way that companies are doing business today. Typically, if you're going to hear somebody talk about technology, they're a Harvard MBA, they live in Silicon Valley, wear funny shoes, drive scooters with earbuds. I did buy the vest, but the rest of it doesn't really apply to me. I came 20 plus years from the packaging industry, worked for large companies, had my own packaging company, and through that process I found some things very troubling, and we're going to talk a little bit about them today, and quite frankly how technology can benefit companies today, and we'll talk a lot about that and the thought process behind it. Because I've learned how to adapt technology and really built a cool team around me that really helped build a phenomenal product, and then today we rely heavily on clients to help us make the product even better every day. And we'll talk a little bit about that and what that means. But the core thesis that I saw over the years and the challenges really was a couple things. One is everybody spoke a different language. You know, I'd go to one customer, I'd help with them, I'd go to another customer, I'd help them, and everybody kind of was trying to do the same thing, but they weren't talking about it the same way. So I saw this common language problem in the industry. The second one probably is more relevant. What I really saw was incomplete or wrong data. I've written about a few articles called spec drift and how specs can change and morph over time and never kind of keep up with the actual product. We've run some interesting studies and found that most companies are running about a 20% variance of actual product to specified product, and we'll talk about that today. The other thing that's more relevant today is the ability to share. We hear that constantly. Is how do I share this data? How do I let everybody, not only outside, but in my own company, know how we do things? It's interesting, I felt like for years I was the conduit. You know, I'd work within big companies, I'd go to one facility or one business and try to share with the other business what they were doing. And then not only that, now trying to share with the outside world what they're trying to do. So the baseline thesis of spec management and spec data management is really this: common language, all the data elements required at a low level, and the ability to share that data. That's the basis thesis of spec data management. So is it getting better or is it getting worse? Because if it's getting better, maybe we don't need to address the problem. But it's actually getting worse. Kellogg came up with a great word. I wish I would have thought of it, but it's called Skewsilla, if you read about that. It was a great nomenclature for what's going on. Why is that going on? Well, those that have been around for a while, look back at the Wheat Thins box over there, and I probably didn't even say original. You know, if you wanted Wheat Thins, you went to the store and you got a box of Wheat Thins. That was kind of the extent of it. Over the last 10 years, a lot of stuff has happened, and everybody in this room that's involved with consumer products would obviously nod your head and go, yep, I get it. I'm struggling with that today. And the first thing that started to happen was consolidation of retail. And retail wanted to really have their influence on what the packaging was, which was unheard of. I always tell the story, you could drop a head of lettuce in a bag, put it in a box, and ship it anywhere, and it all worked. All of a sudden, retailers wanted this heavy influence, and they wanted it because they wanted to be able to differentiate themselves from their competitors. So it makes common sense, but it created complexity that wasn't there prior to that. The other thing that happened that I don't know if you remember, but generic or non-branded product used to say generic on it. It was a white box and said, you know, generic. That became a trend. It's a massive trend today. Everybody's private labeling. There are retailers out there today that obviously have nothing but private label or heavy influence of private label, and or their own labels commingling with branded products. But the core product is very similar. It's the packaging that differentiates. Globalization. We wanted to taste of the world, and the world wanted to taste of what we're doing. So that created great complexity and added items. And then the trend, if you think about it and you read a lot of the articles, is only getting more complex. The millennials want it different, right? I mean, that's the whole trend that we're all trying to understand and study today. So this is only going to get worse. So if we agree that the skew population is growing, studies say about 30% a year, There's an attrition rate of less than 10, so we're net growing at a 20% rate. We believe there's 200 million specs out there in the world today. We've done a lot of math around that, and that number's growing at a rampant pace. The second kind of backdrop issue is that we're in a Google it society. I mean, that's all I do to figure anything out in life is you Google it, right? So that's created expectations of our companies, of our consumers, of our customers. And that kind of rolls into the next one, which is how long do you have to respond to things? It used to be you could take weeks to get an answer or get product, then it got to days, and now it's hours, and now it's seconds, if not instantaneously. I think if I don't answer an email in 5 minutes, they're really worried if I'm alive, right? I mean, that's the speed at which we're running today. So you take the backdrop, what was a problem already, which was no data, wrong data, not the good languages, not able to share it, SKUs are proliferating, expectations are rising, and it creates an opportunity for something. But you really have to stop and ask, does it really matter? Is it just uncomfortable? Is it just not real efficient? You know, if we just throw more people at it, will it work? Well, what if I just use the systems I have, kind of that were built 30 years ago, will that work? Is it impacting my business? And this is an interesting slide because I think in some cases you might say no, because it becomes so common. It's common to struggle, and I think we've all just kind of put up with that. But if you're really trying to drive cost efficiencies to the company, you have to do it differently. It's interesting, and no knock on consultants per se, but they come in with great thoughts and ideas and give you millions of dollars of savings, but actualizing that to the P&L is very difficult. It's hard to take action on that quickly and make things happen. So technology needs to address that. The other thing I think we're all sensing is high efficiency regulatory requirements. The FDA is getting more involved in obviously our products and what's happening. You see these massive recalls, you see people dying, you see people getting sick. There's an expectation from the public today that you know what you're doing. You know what materials are in your packaging, you know what materials are in your product, and you know, and you can respond to that quickly and take action instantaneously. Why can't you? Because technology is there today. The consumer will not understand and appreciate your legacy issues. The last thing is, or that I'm going to touch on, is speed to market. The markets are changing so fast. We talk on technology. Technology is really exciting today because it's the speed, it's so fast. Things can be built and destroyed very quickly. So can markets. If you want to get your product into a country, do you know instantaneously if it's acceptable in that country, if it has the compliance standards that needs to go in that country, and can you get it there from a supply chain standpoint? It is affecting your business, even though we're comfortable and we kind of know this is the way it is. It just works this way. So that started to create an opportunity where I sat back, and fortunately very early on with some very smart people, and said there's got to be a different way to do this. There's got to be a way that we get to the granular level of the detail in a templated system and create this ecosphere that's really the foundation for which businesses do business upon. And we coined the term specification data management. So if you kind of pull that apart, we all know what specs are, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We know what data is, and then obviously you do it to drive management and action out of it. So how does it interrelate to other systems, that more legacy systems that we kind of understand in a better method? Well, you've got PLM. PLM is really very good to build computers, cars, other products like that, probably very necessary. Very workflow heavy, very spec light, and that's fine for when you're building a car, but at some point packaging kind of interjects into that, or other products interject to that. And if I haven't mentioned it, because we started in packaging and the dynamic nature of packaging, we've now been moved into ingredients and chemicals and machinery parts. And those in packaging background here, from a technology standpoint, will appreciate packaging was one of the hardest things to accomplish from a technology standpoint, because you have, packaging is not one and done. It's 40, 50 different types of packaging, all of it have its own data field structure, all of it has its own relationships. That creates a very big challenge for technology. Early on I was told it couldn't be done. It did get done. Now it's easy to pivot and go to other products, and that's what we've done. So PLM is good for very complex, long processes. We're really not worried about future life. Packaging, actually we spend a lot of time on the front side and minimal time on the back side, when that package may last for many years and has great assets. ERPs were really built. ERPs came in after products were made. So it really was just trying to capture the COGS, cost of goods sold. How does this relate to the overall profitability of the company. It didn't really care about sourcing it, trying to supply it, trying to innovate it. That's not the focus of an ERP system. And then obviously visual merchandising. There's great tools out there that really do a great job of merchandising what it looks like, how it interrelates with the consumer. None of these really are focused on the granular level of detail. When you make a pouch or when you make flour, what does it take to do that? And then how do you separate that out into commodities, or how do you separate that out into innovation? And that's what specification data management is about. Obviously we built a system, but I'm really here just to talk about the concept of it more than our product. What does it do for you? Why is that thought process correct? I think that we're in an open world that everybody should be doing this, even if you don't use our product, because it's the right way to do it. It creates efficiencies. It's always interesting when we talk as a company to clients that talk to the users, the purchasing department, the quality department, the supply chain, the package engineering group, always get it. They get the concept that we're trying to present. They go back, run to their boss, and the first thing is, no, we've got systems. The system's got to do it. The problem is the systems that you have are not built for the problem. The problem that I just addressed is the last 10 years. The technology that we talked about before happened many, many years ago. So it's a different world. It's like, I'm trying to find a good analogy. And it's like a guy hammering a nail into a brick wall, and the boss walks by and just says, just keep hitting it harder. Like, it'll go in eventually, right? It's not meant, the tool is not meant for the problem. So specification data management's meant for the problem. So how does it interrelate? The cool part with technology today is everything's very connectable. It's actually very easy to create to and from connections with systems. So for instance, you can integrate and run with an ERP system, and kind of, if you envision it, specification data management's the engine. The ERP might be the steering wheel from a financial standpoint, or you can run specification data management on its kind of siloed system. Same thing with PLMs. Specification data management can be down here, your PLMs run along, it's a nice workbench, and then it connects with the data at some point when it creates the formal product. Technology's really come a long ways today with its connectivity. And the other thing that's really cool is we're on version 33, I think now. You can continually innovate. Back 10, 15 years ago, you made a technology change and you hope you got it right. So you spent 2 years studying it, because if you launched and it was wrong, it's very expensive to fix. Today, technology is not like that. It's very adaptive to where the world's going, which is great because it's morphing. I think back to version 1 and how difficult it was. I was in whiteboard sessions for months on end, and today it seems so simple because it just kind of morphs forward. So that's the concept of specification data management, and that's really where it belongs. I look at it as the foundational data structure and templated system for technology to empower actions. So stepping back, the definition of a spec is interesting. Everybody says, oh, I got a spec, and then they'll pull out something, or I got a spec and pull out, back to that language, and nobody's on kind of the same page. So I look at a spec as, quite frankly, everything in this room. I'm a little quirky that way. I think everything can be digitized and everything can be duplicated, because today technology allows that. But at a baseline level for the conversation today, the apple drop bottle is the spec. There's a label spec, there's a bottle spec, there's a cap spec, there's a closure spec. There's probably a packaging, a box spec, maybe an overwrap spec, a pallet spec, corner board spec. Those are all specs to me. They're all individual entities that need to be separated and studied. Then obviously they have mechanical drawings that come with them. That's an element of a spec, right? You got to embed the data to make the data powerful. You have a spec that goes with it, typically drawings, maybe CAD files, CAPE drawings, and then obviously the bill of materials. That rolls up into a bill of materials, and then ultimately that becomes the data which you can hand off to your other systems and or divvy out back to different commodities, right? I'm going a step further, which is actually at the bottle level, you have resin. That's a spec, right? And if you control that spec, then controls the bottle spec, then controls the outbound spec, you do truly know how everything's happening, and you can separate it for efficiencies and gains. We're now actually moving into machinery specs. So if you think about it, we're building specs for everything in the machine, the packaging, the ingredients, and then you can slice and dice that and create language and knowledge of what fits with what and what cannot fit with what. So we have a many-to-many relationship in our database, and that's important. We messed up early on that. We created a one-to-one relationship. We've switched that to a one-to-many. My point to that is If you have that bottle and use that bottle in 20 different applications, never duplicate that spec. You link the spec. That way, if you change the spec, you know the rest have been changed. If you go to change one of the specs, you know 19 others are going to be impacted by that. So you have to have a one-to-many relationship, and then you do the same thing with BOMs. You have to have multi-level BOMs. So you might have a machinery BOM, you might have a packaging BOM, you might have a product BOM. That product BOM can also go with this machine, but it can't go with this packaging. And you create this efficiency, and it's actually sounds complicated, but in technology today, it flows so fast. And it's so eloquent when you see that happening compared to how things are done today. So to me, if you look at one of our clients is a big carrot producer, there's a water spec, a soil spec, a carrot, a seed spec, a carrot spec, a packaging spec, and then you have the inbound logistics spec. How do you want this stuff to be coming into you? And it's interesting, oh, I want these bottles to come into Chicago one way and I want them to go into LA another way, so what do? We duplicate specs and we change the shipping information. Then all of a sudden one day we go to change the Chicago spec and oh my God, I forgot once a year we ship to LA, I forgot we didn't change that spec. That's because you're duplicating for redundancy, and a lot of ERP systems require kind of a facility-based spec module. It doesn't work. You have to step up above it and come up with one common thought process and then link that data. So spec to me is inbound, the product, diced up, rolled into BOMs, and then the outbound application to retailers, clients, e-commerce, et cetera. So we got the common concept of what's wrong, what happened, why has history not been on our side? It's only getting worse. We talked about kind of the spec level BOM management, what that looks like, many, but then you have to be able to do stuff with it. I'm going to jump to the one that's always driven me the most nuts in the business, which is accurate. I can't tell you how much inefficiency there is in the world because it's inaccurate data. You go and you say, oh, I got some business for you, you go to hand it off, oh wait, I'm not sure if that dimension's right, or I'm not sure if that color's right. Let me find out. 3 months later, you get back together and you talk about it again. So one of the things I said early on, if you're going to do spec management right, you have to make sure that the data always stays clean. And with technology, that's possible. It's really some cool tools that we're enabling today to kind of look for anomalies, to periodically ping the vendor world, hey, is this what you're running? You know, just let me know, we're on the same page, right? Just automatically, nobody has to push anything, no one has to send emails, it's just kind of automatically out there looking, right? We're looking at technology where snapshots can be taken a product and actualized back to the spec and say, is this really what's in the market today, right? So the technology can help you see if stuff stays accurate. Without accuracy, you can't have fast action. I mean, that's obvious, right? That's what typically slows processes down. Actionable. You got to be able to take action. We're going to talk about some real cases where people are taking action because they have the data at their fingertips. What's interesting in spec data management is people come to us and say, can you do this? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. We're not making up. Because you've got the core templated system and the connections done correct, the rest is easy, figuratively. But the rest is pretty easy to do from there. So actionable, it has to be fast. It has to take action quickly today. And we're going to talk about some real cases. And then it has to change things. It has to make waste better. What's interesting, I just heard it last night, it's a great story. We took a client that had 2,000 specs in their mind, which they didn't, which we knew they didn't, and we've got them down below 900 and going probably towards 500. So much duplicity and inaccuracy and wrong way to manage their data that's inefficient. Think about just the core concept of, is it easier to manage 500 elements or 2,000? I mean, it's obviously one quarter of the problem, right? So that's what this is about, and then easy. Something that I harp on, probably took a year to get the company going, longer than it should have, because I will not rest if it's not easy. And it's got to be easy because we're expecting everybody to use it. And we're going to talk about the jump to technology, but it's got to be intuitive. You got to be able to look at something, technology today, I left my iPhone out there, it's amazingly intuitive, right? I mean, our kids, do it. They pick up stuff, they swipe, they know how to do it. It's intuitive. Well, if you want to look at something to the right, you swipe, right? Years ago, what would you do? You'd have to pull out the next one, right? So intuitive, easy, creates usability. Usability, action, accurate, that all plays together. So it's exciting that technology is supporting that. So we talk about the problem, the world today, the opportunity for technology to solve those problems, how that kind of works. But is it really working? So I'm going to go through 4 use cases and talk a little bit about actual companies that are utilizing specification data management and talk about how it's changing their business. One of the companies I'm going to highlight today is the largest organic produce producer in the country. They came to us, and produce, anybody that's in produce knows there's cost sensitivity, right? I mean, it's a constant driver in the business, high volume, cost sensitivity. They had a bid process they did every 2 years, which would typically take them 6 months. And if you're honest, it's probably how long it takes you from trying to find the data, make sure the data's right, get the data in the vendor's hands, get the prices back, try to have the post-bid negotiations, try to get the samples, try to get in production, try to get inventory run out. That's a very long process. So let's just say you're going to save $5 million and it took you 6 months. Did you save $5 million? No, you saved $2.5 million, right? So they're very smart, they get that, they saw spec data management, they said, oh my God, this has got to be able to solve our problem, and it did. The first year out of the gate, they doubled their anticipated savings, which resulted in millions of extra dollars of savings. I won't get into specifics because they've asked me not to, but it's a big number that they saved above and beyond. And now they can go to bid any day they want. If they have a supply issue, if they have a concern issue, a crop issue, with a few clicks, they're out to bid, they're comfortable, the data's accurate, they're comfortable, the vendors have the right data, the vendors have been trained on the system, and now what they're doing is running VMI, back to that inventory runout. So VMI runs through spec data management, so it's studying and looking at the products and when it needed to be reordered, it's automatically reordered, and then when it's end of life or close to bid, it automatically starts tapering that data down. It's been up and running for a couple of years now, ecstatic. They're moving us into their machinery, they're also moving us into the graphic management piece, because they saw that it actually changed their life. And it's something I speak about all the time. I know some of them over there, they get to spend the time doing what they were trained to do, not chase data, not pick up samples, not hand samples to vendors. They get to be packaging engineers, they get to be procurement professionals, and get to make their lives better, and actually probably go home on time. So if you have the ability to kind of tap a few buttons, go to bid, have stuff happen within weeks versus 6 months, you're in the spec data management realm, and we love to have you be part of our user group discussion because we're trying to figure this out for everybody. Another great company makes phenomenal products, but actually one of them that you see up there, I can't eat. I'm highly allergic to dairy, right? So I'm paranoid. Anybody eats with me about good, and I don't have lactose. It's dairy, it's an allergy, right? And so this company said, hey, we're tired of bolting solutions on. The customer wants this thing, now we got to boost on this and bolt on this. We want to get the core data right, and then we want to drive allergens, we want to drive label technology. We might utilize a few systems outside of there, but we really want the core right, and we want to know the logic, what flour can go with what product, what allergen relates to what percentages relate to what, and then we'll get to packaging, and that's where we're headed next to them. We fixed their ingredient world, it's gotten much better. We integrated with their J.D. Edwards system, we integrated with their Genesis system, so once again, we fit in a nice spot, and now that's how they're going to drive all the intelligence going forward for the company. And I'm going to talk about future products, and they're going to be ripe for one of them that we're working on. So sustainability. People that heard me speak says, honestly, you can't be sustainable if you don't know where you're at. Let's kind of be honest. And if you know how many pounds of fiber you consumed last year, and what ratio against product that is, or how much resin you consume, and what ratio that is against your financials or your annuals, and how much carbon you use to get product to you and product out of you, then you got it. Then you're living in spec data management. If you don't, spec data management is the key. And this company in Europe, Switzerland, found us and said, we believe we need to really understand where we're at so we can track progress. It's a journey. Sustainability is not an end and a start, it's a journey. We want to see where the journey's going, and we want the CEO to be able to pull up a spreadsheet, a graph every morning and know, are we getting better or worse? We're working with a big retailer today, which we can't talk about. We are going to be their sustainability platform. And what they're going to do is look at where they're at today, inbound materials coming in, how long is that coming in, what's the material composite, how much of that do they consume a year against how many products sold, and then they're going to start to track progress, and then they're going to share that with the world. So spec data management is the core baseline of what you're studying. If you know all that, you can tell where you are. A lot of companies in here probably came together through consolidation. What's interesting is there's a lot of energy put on creating new products, very little energy put on looking in the rearview mirror and going, oh my God, I created 10,000 products. Maybe there's some cool stuff in there. So this company, huge consumer product company that's in your kitchens, all of our kitchens today, says, hey, we're tired of doing that, we want some better intelligence. We want to know, what do we have today? Can we consolidate those items? Can we clone those items? Can we create new items, but link them together so we don't lose them? That automatically happens in this system, which is part of Spec Data Management. So they are doing amazing things, creating phenomenal efficiencies. They are coming off of an old Lotus Notes spreadsheet system. Come a long ways. Packaging, we studied that, now we're packaging, now we understand ingredients, we understand chemicals, we're starting to understand machineries, how all those specs interrelate, and then how you can organize them and connect them through links. Where are we going to go now? Well, one of the biggest things, and I encourage anybody that can, we have our user group in Nashville in January. It's an open forum. Big companies come in, small companies come in and talk about this. We listen to clients. I was with some great clients last night from Europe. One of the things I try to stress is we're always listening. What's right, what's wrong, make it a better, great experience for everybody. Next two things we're going to look at as we go forward is community. I want like-minded companies to be able to share their data as they want to share it. Maybe they have a supply issue in part of the world and they want to share that opportunity. Maybe they've found a great product and they want to share that, or maybe they've had some great opportunities to go to market together. So we'll enable people to be able to share that data stream together. And then lastly, aware. However you want the world to see your product, we'll give you that visibility in Spec Data Management. Maybe you want them to have a little look, a big look. Maybe you want the consumer to be able to look, don't know. That's the stuff we're working on next. And it's going to really advantage the clients that are already on it to capture the future. So as I wrap up, I would be disingenuous to say, it all sounds great, but it's too hard. It's too daunting. And I've kind of put it in two buckets. One bucket is just the adaptation of technology. And I think it's very hard for people to say that. You know, when you see new technology, I know it's hard for me when my team comes and go, I don't get it, I need a few more minutes. Typically, like, you want to be, yeah, I get it now, that's cool. I'll do it, and then you don't do it, right? But technology is coming so far, so fast, and so easy. And quite frankly, it's not going away, right? So we got to figure out how to jump into technology. And then lastly, well, you don't know how bad our data is. Well, actually, we probably do. Well, right now, as we speak, I have people processing hundreds of thousands of specs through the system. We know where to find the data, we know what looks wrong, we have some really cool technology that helps us strip data, and we're going to get better. We just keep getting better at it. When we first did it, it was really hard. I had a bunch of people key punching, and now it's advanced so far. We have seen the messes. We've gone all the way from samples to data. We went from old systems to data, and it's a journey. You start with a product line, you start with a division, you start with a group, and you just keep building, and it creates this really cool inertia. And we're passing the bars on some big companies today, going to the next phase, and it's amazing to watch what they're doing and how fast things are happening for them. So it is daunting. Be honest about it. Let's talk about the challenges. In amongst the user groups, a great way to share companies. I love it. They just start talking about how they're doing it, their challenges, how the tools they're using are facilitating it, and we look forward to that this year. So as I wrap up, pretty passionate about Spec Data Management because it is the right way to do it. We're talking about packaging, but quite frankly, everything in this room is a spec. If we knew it and we could touch it with our fingers, we could make this room happen again next door instantly. And that's the concept of Spec Data Management.